Well, folks, I'm going to take you one step further in your education tonight. I am holding in my hands, dear listeners, an old, very old book, published in 1883 in Philadelphia by Collins and McDill. The name of this book is In the Coils, or The Coming Conflict. Again, this book was published in 1883 in Philadelphia by Collins and McDill. The title is In the Coils, or The Coming Conflict by E.B.G. This is the second edition, which means there was an edition before this. And there's a quote here by Wendell Phillips, who says, "This is the next great question that the nation must take up and decide." And this book, ladies and gentlemen, is priceless, for it describes, it was originally copyrighted in 1882, actually not copyrighted, but entered according to Act of Congress in the year 1882 by A.T. McDill in the Office of the Librarian of Congress at Washington, D.C. So if you can't find this anywhere else, it is in the Library of Congress. This is about one man's battle with Freemasonry. And I'm going to read to you a letter which begins on page 237. This letter is written by Dr. Groves and sent to a Mr. Dover. Brandon, May 18th. My dear friend, I have delayed a reply to your note in order that I might be able to answer both your questions fully and with some degree of certainty. I'm glad to be able to say that I am personally acquainted with your nephew and that I highly esteem him. I have consulted several influential men in our village, and we all agree in our opinion of Bates and his prospects in this precinct. So I can answer both of your questions together and use the plural we and our instead of showing you mine opinion alone. We believe Bates to be the best candidate in the field as yet, and it is possible that he will have our hearty support. We are not altogether satisfied with any of our candidates, but we do not expect to find one that will suit us in every particular. We may consistently support a person and yet have some objection to him. So in regard to Bates, we have one serious objection to him, but whether that will be in our way of supporting him depends upon circumstances. I suppose you want a plain statement of the whole matter rather than any uncertain and flattering promises. And I will not be kept back by fear of offending you or by a desire for office or popularity from stating clearly our objection to Bates and the circumstances in which he may probably expect our support. We do not object to his abilities, moral character, republicanism, relatives, or general fitness for the place. We appreciate him for all these. Our only objection to him is that by certain and numerous oaths which he considers binding, we do not, however, he has pledged his support to a monopoly which is more powerful and dangerous than those which he professes to oppose, and has sworn his allegiance to a government which claims supremacy over all other authority, whether of church or state. In a word, as we are informed, Mr. Bates is a Freemason. Now we know that everyone who enters the lodge swears, quote, to support the Constitution of the Grand Lodge of the state and to conform to the laws of any lodge of which he shall be a member, and also to obey all regular signs, summons, or tokens from any Mason or body of Masons. Now, whatever he may be told before taking this oath, after he does so, he is taught that the authority of the lodge is absolute, the covenant is irrevocable, and its obligations are supreme. In General Ahimad Rezan, or the Freemason's Guide, we read, quote, the candidate entering the lodge is on the point of binding himself voluntarily, absolutely, and without reservation forever. Webb's Monitor says, the covenant is irrevocable. Even though a Mason may be suspended or expelled, though he may withdraw from the lodge, journey into countries where Masons cannot be found, or become a subject of despotic governments that persecute, a communicant of bigoted churches that denounce Masonry, he cannot cast off or nullify his Masonic covenant. No law of the land can affect it. No anathema of the church can weaken it. It is irrevocable, unquote. Again, this same Masonic author says, quote, the first duty of the reader of this synopsis is to obey the edicts of his Grand Lodge. Right or wrong, his very existence as a Mason hangs upon obedience to the power immediately set above him. Failure in this must infallibly bring down expulsion, which as a Masonic death ends all. The one unpardonable crime in a Mason is contumacy or disobedience, unquote. Although it takes much space in my letter, let me give you more testimony with the names of the witnesses, who are all eminent members of the order and high in authority, and some of whose works are in nearly every lodge and necessarily have some effect on the members. Quote, that this surrender of free will to Masonic authority is absolute within the scope of the landmarks of the order and perpetual may be inferred from an examination of the emblem, the shoe or sandal, which is used to enforce this lesson of resignation, unquote. That's from the Morris Dictionary of Freemasonry. Quote, disobedience is so subversive of the groundwork of Masonry, in which obedience is so strongly inculcated, that the Mason who disobeys subjects himself to severe penalties, unquote. I did. Quote, a Grand Lodge is invested with power and authority over all the craft within its jurisdiction. It is the Supreme Court of Appeals in all Masonic cases, and to its degrees, unlimited obedience must be paid by every lodge and every Mason situated within its control. The government of Grand Lodges is, therefore, completely despotic. While a Grand Lodge exists, its edicts must be respected and obeyed without examination by its subordinate lodges, unquote. That's from Mackey, Lexicon of Freemasonry, page 183. Quote, for ourselves, we deny as Masons that any civil government on earth has the right to divide or curtail Masonic jurisdiction when once established. It can only be done by competent Masonic authority and in accordance with Masonic usage, unquote, from the Grand Lodge Report. Quote, a due summons from the Lodge or Grand Lodge is obligatory upon him, and should he refuse obedience, he will be disgracefully expelled from the society with public marks of ignominy that can never be erased, unquote. That's from the Morris Dictionary of Freemasonry, page number 29. Quote, disobedience and want of respect to Masonic superiors is an offense for which the transgressor subjects himself to punishment, unquote. That's from Mackey, Masonic Jurisprudence, page 511. Quote, hence we find that the master's authority in the lodge is as despotic as the sun in the firmament, which was placed there by the Creator, never to deviate from its accustomed course till the declaration is promulgated that time shall be no more, unquote. That's from Oliver's Signs and Symbols of Freemasonry, page 142. Quote, treason and rebellion also, because they are altogether political offenses, cannot be inquired into by a lodge, and although a Mason may be convicted of either of these acts in the courts of his country, he cannot be Masonically punished, and notwithstanding his treason or rebellion, his relation to the lodge, to use the language of the old charges, remains indefeasible, unquote. That's from Mackey's Masonic Jurisprudence, page 510. I'm going to read that again, and I want you to pay close attention. Quote, treason and rebellion also, because they are altogether political offenses, cannot be inquired